If you're looking for that game that gives you a challenge and is satisfying to play, but still fun, this is probably it. A game I have recommended to many, but also on the advice not to complete it. Shinobi is a stylish hack and slash with a nice gentle learning curve. There's some games are fair and others aren't, not at all. Get used to seeing that game over screen throughout this game.
This is ridiculous.
So we'll wind back. What is Shinobi? This game was developed by Overworks and published by Sega back in 2002. It's actually the 10th in the Shinobi series and the first to take on a 3D action hack and slash that still keeps its arcade feel, and partly of that is due to the levels throughout the games being a total of 8 levels cut into half, making it 16 stages with a boss at the end of each stage. Another thing that keeps that arcade feel is that the game has no checkpoints, but allows you to retry boss fights upon reaching them. That's the closest thing you have to a checkpoint, so you have to make it through the level in one shot. The game's levels are very direct and roughly about 10 minutes to complete, but there's definitely some trial and error to be had between these levels. The game's first few stages will help you learn everything that becomes a staple between each level, and it's nothing people haven't seen before. From wall running to basic platforming, there's a couple of environmental hazards, but none get in the way except for bottomless pits. Remember when I said this game has no checkpoints? Enemies between each level are varied enough to remind you of each tool in your combat kit. What you begin with at the start of the game is what you'll carry till the end. You won't find enemies that have a particular gimmick or weakness to be able to beat them. It's simply mastering the mechanics that the game gives you. And you just saw the mechanic that the whole game is built around. The game's difficulty comes from its combat being kill as many enemies as you can as quick as possible. With each kill you deal more damage, but that time is pretty quick and it's just as easy to be stun locked to dropping your combo. Now there's nothing special about this game's buttons. It carries the same foundations as most hack and slash games, from attack, jump, dash. This game also shows that the combat doesn't have to be as deep as an ocean and still be fun. But what separates this from others? Well, this game actually has a really special combat system that I've never seen implemented before or afterwards. You may have noticed these pips that appear on the top right of my screen whenever an enemy is nearby. One pip represents one enemy. When you kill an enemy, one of those pips lights up, and if you can do it in quick succession and you can chain enough of these enemies together for a quick but very stylish animation. Each kill allows you to dish out more damage, so higher the chain, more damage to cash out. That's actually how this game goes about with bosses. Normally if a game introduces mobs within a boss fight, it's because the boss isn't all that interesting itself. But since this game's built around the one mechanic of chaining kills, you see where I'm going here? Maybe it's just best if I show it. See, I made that look real easy, but behind the scenes, that boss nearly took me 3 hours to beat. One mechanic that I've neglected to mention thus far is your sword. In the bottom left of your screen, the white pips are your health and the red pips are your sword's health. Your sword's health depletes over time, and when emptied, begins to deplete your health. The only way to replenish your sword's health is killing enemies, so it doesn't really give you a chance to dawdle around between each level because you've got to keep on the move. And with that, it just kind of adds to the risk and reward stress that the game induces. But because levels are so short, what's another 5 minutes? I'm going to be short on bosses just so you can give it a go yourself, but almost all boss fights in this game are good. I don't think there was ever a time I was overly miserable or thought it was unfair. There is one or two that are just a bit bland and boring. The awful English dub makes up for those sections. Just wait for the mobs to spawn, chain up those kills, then dish out the damage. Some bosses you'll have to think outside the square, but you'll figure it out. This game genuinely has some of the best boss fights I have played. Having the stage selection and revisiting those boss fights is so much fun. I mean, God only knows how many times I went back and versed the boss at stage 7. Honestly, this is where the game should have stopped. It would have turned this 6 out of 10 game to almost an 8. Okay, so here's my problem with the final boss. I recall how much fun I had as a kid after a huge uphill battle going through each of these bosses. I couldn't beat this guy. As a kid, all you had was word of mouth, see if there was something I was missing. And out of frustration, I put it down. It seemed like no one knew this game but me. I brought it up to a number of friends. No one knew this game. Until I see a YouTuber called CVid back in 2022. Credit to him. He's shown off how much style the game had, how fun it is, and brought it to a platform that everyone got to see. Upon watching his video, I got to recall how much fun I had. And it wasn't until afterwards I decided to revisit and try again. Everything I said earlier about the game being fair, it's out the window with this boss. The first phase is an invincible state, is a timer or threshold of prevented damage. And every time you die to this clown, you have to go through phase 1 again. And the chain kill mechanic the game was built around almost feels pointless to this boss. I was at a point where I was chaining about 4 enemies together and cashing out that damage instead of going for a one shot. Because unlike every other previous boss, this arena is far bigger and the timing restriction is just such a nightmare. There's also some odd decisions made with this boss on the fact that there's no music at all when the game carries so much style and such a great score. Yet this just feels bland and dull. Upon reaching the final boss, you're meant to be excited and eager to finish after putting all the hard work in. Yet you're greeted with someone so cheap that has more moves than anyone else in the game, from a teleport, 3 different projectiles, 1 AoE, the mobs that he summons even shoot projectiles. It feels more reminiscent to a bullet hell crossed with some luck. If you want to hope in hell at beating this guy, you have to recall everything you've used before and be comfortable with the game's combat. Because even so many times after you chain kill 6-7 enemies, the time for you to cash out that damage, the final boss is hanging over the edge and you can risk it to try and cash it out, but do you really want to go through all this again? Throughout my playthrough of the game, I didn't run into a problem with the lock-on until these mobs, or even trying to hit the final boss when standing over the edge. To give you an idea on how long this boss took for me to beat, I cleared Elden Ring's DLC before I beat this boss. I understand skill dip, but when everything is against you, I don't know how many hours I put into as a kid trying to win, but it feels like it was always a losing battle. I almost scrapped this video. This boss put such a sour taste in my mouth, and it recalls back to the beginning of the video. I love this game, but I do not recommend to anyone to beat it. Obviously there's those that play difficult games for the novelty. This wasn't that for me, because there's a good game here. It's fun, quick, responsive. I'll probably still revisit this from years to come. This video couldn't have been made without the support of my friends and family, and hopefully I can have your support too. I understand this first video is pretty rough, but with time and practice, hopefully we can get there. If you've made it to the end of the video, I want to say thank you. And if you want to see more like this, please hit that like and subscribe. And if you want to support me further, there'll be a Patreon in the description.